While you were sleeping, Trump just launched the most aggressive economic warfare campaign against China since the trade wars. 50 nations, one goal: break Beijing's chokehold on the minerals that power everything from your phone to our fighter jets. But China is not going down without a fight. And what they're planning next might just shock you. See, here's what this means for you personally. You see, every electronic device you own, every electric vehicle, every piece of military hardware defending this country, it all depends on rare earth minerals. And right now, China controls 80% of global supply. They can literally cut off our economy with the flip of a switch. Your job, your retirement, your kids' future, all held hostage by Beijing. Now, politically, this is Trump delivering on his promise to end American dependence on hostile nations. But socially, this coalition represents the biggest realignment of global power since World War II. You see, America is building new alliances while isolating China. The question isn't whether this will work. The real question is whether we start it soon enough. And speaking of critical minerals that China wants to control, more breaking news that you do need to know about. I'm talking about uranium. You see, the story we're covering right now actually started on January 5th of this year, when the Department of Energy announced $2.7 billion in contracts to restore domestic uranium enrichment capabilities. Now, that was like the appetizer. What happened today is the main course. You see, this is not just government spending. It's a declaration of intent. It's because America needs uranium, and it needs domestic uranium right now. And that's what Marco Rubio, that's what Vice President Vance was up to today, President Trump. It's because the U.S. consumes 50 million pounds of uranium annually, but produces only 5% domestically. We are completely dependent on foreign suppliers, including countries that aren't exactly friendly, like China or Russia. Now, smart investors saw this coming years ago. Atomic Minerals Corp has been quietly building the largest uranium portfolio in America. Okay, folks, they're not just mining uranium. They're securing America's energy independence. So while other companies chase trendy investments, Atomic Minerals is actually positioned for the American uranium boom that is starting. It's starting right now. It started this morning. The Department of Energy contracts already prove it. You see, America's going all in on domestic uranium. The question is, will you? There's an exclusive briefing that has been prepared for you. It's linked below because energy independence starts with uranium independence. Now, here's the twist that nobody saw coming. India just became America's secret weapon in this mineral war. While Pakistan begs for scraps, Modi's government is inside the room making the rules. Trump praised Modi publicly while other nations watch from the sidelines. It's not just about minerals anymore. This is about a complete reshuffling of global alliances. Some countries are about to get left behind permanently. Look at this picture. Look at this. This photo reminds me of when you see like these G20 alliances and G8 or whatever. But who pulled this off? This isn't some globalist party. This is Trump. This is America first. Do you understand? Look who's at the center of that picture. That's Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, leading the charge. Okay? And he's surrounded by all the other nations of the world. It's because we're at the center. It's because it's America first. This is only the beginning. Pay very close attention to this report. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio at the Critical Minerals Ministerial. This initiative here may be one that started with us, but it's not just the American initiative. This is how we restore our rightful place in the world.
And I want to end by saying that while we intend to play a key role and an important role and to use the size and influence of our markets to drive this, This is an international, multilateral effort, and it only works. You can only have diversity and choice in these markets if it is broadly adopted across multiple countries. So this initiative here today may be one that started with us, but this is not solely an American initiative. This must be an international, global initiative with like-minded countries who all have one thing in common. We want to see a diverse supply of critical minerals and a secure and resilient supply chains across the world so all of our economies can prosper without ever having these things be susceptible, at worst case scenario, being used as leverage against us, or any other disruption that could come to the market that would undermine our collective economic security.
He's being a little humble there. But, yeah, welcome to the MAGA world order, folks. We're calling the shots now. The MFA of Morocco, Mr. Nasser Bourita, took part today in Washington at the ministerial meeting on critical minerals organized by the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, aimed at discussing solutions to secure and diversify critical mineral supply chains. You guys all remember what happened during COVID, right? You got a little taste of the supply chain disruption. Imagine if there was a massive supply chain disruption and China said, guess what? Russia's like, no, we're not sending. Our entire national security infrastructure crumbles. Data centers collapse. Yeah, it's bad, folks. That's why people don't even recognize the significance here. India joining the global elite, posing alongside U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and other leaders. TRT World covering this, one of the few. Listen.
Meeting involves dozens of countries from around the world, but it's really all about one country, and that country is China, which obviously is not present here. At the moment, China has 60% of the world's critical earth minerals and processes 90% of those that are being processed. So it has a real stranglehold on supply at the moment. And the Americans had a nasty scare last year when Trump announced he was levying 100% tariffs on China. The Chinese response was to say that it was going to stop the export of these minerals to the United States, and the United States simply cannot function in the way it needs to without those minerals. So Trump immediately dropped that threat of tariffs, but it has been something of a wake-up call both for the Americans and for the rest of the world about
Did you hear what he said?
need to...
Did you hear what he said? Trump threatened China with 100% tariffs. And China picked up the phone and said, you want to play that game? We're going to cut off your mineral imports. No, not going to send them. Forced Trump into a position. He recognized the national security threat. He had to back down because he knew that if China cut us off, we're screwed. And that's why today is so important, because this is the counter move. This is the counter strike against China. Welcome to the MAGA world order, bitches.
Diversify, the need to get away from this reliance on the Chinese. So this meeting is all about how best to do that, how to get more investment into the extraction of these minerals, into the processing of these minerals, and to gradually reduce this reliance on the Chinese. Now, one of the major aspects of all this will be pricing. Many of the countries here are saying, yes, we can go ahead and do more of this extraction, but we need to know that it's going to be worth our while or our businesses' while. So they want a minimum price guarantee that the Americans are willing to pay for these minerals. So far, the US has not said that that's acceptable. So that will be one of the major parts of the debate here. But this is being seen as long-term critical for the strategy going forward.
A couple weeks ago, we had the CEO of one of the major mining companies on. Go back. It's a part of our new national security series. See, we've been paying attention to this. We've been trying to bring it to people's attention. Go back, watch that interview. We're going to be lining up another one with the CEO next week. You do not want to miss it. Part 2 in our national security series. And all of this is connected. the first critical minerals summit. Here's Marco Rubio.
Not have manufacturing without reliable and affordable energy. And so it's one of those things that I think potentially we could continue to partner along with other things, whether it's mining opportunities off the seabed. In essence, to utilize all of the resources of the country in a responsible way that protects your environment, that protects your natural beauty, but at the same time is generating income and opportunity of employment for the people. Ultimately, that's governments have two prime responsibilities, the safety and the prosperity.
Okay. Did you note what he said there about the environmental impact? You see, that's one of the major roadblocks that have been preventing us from securing our own frickin' resources in this country. You got these communists and these leftists screaming about spotted owls and cicadas or whatever. The breeding ground of the, purple frog. Right? You can't disrupt it. They care more about a purple frickin' frog than our own national security. Again, I go back to COVID. You remember what happened? The supply chain disruptions. Imagine that on a national security scale. China's got us by the balls, folks. They've got us by the balls. But Trump is about to make his move, and he did with this summit. Keep going. Marco Rubio talking about the U.S. mining. Check this out. Talking about what they just discovered in Mountain Pass, California.
And I want to use a case in point from our own history to highlight this. The United States used to produce its own critical minerals and derivative products like rare earth magnets. Back in 1949, miners in Mountain Pass, California discovered one of the world's richest mineral deposits. By 1952, the United States, we were mining rare earths there, and that discovery sparked a revolution. American scientists and engineers, alongside innovators from many of the countries that are here today, rushed to discover new applications for these minerals. And with these new technologies, ushered in the jet age. We ushered in the space age. We ushered in the computer age. And then we became blinded by the potential of the technologies those metals enabled, but we neglected their importance. Mining is less glamorous than building computers. It's less glamorous than building cars or airplanes. But building computers and cars and airplanes is less glamorous than designing them. As we embraced what was new and glamorous, we outsourced what seemed old and unfashionable. We allowed, for example, Mountain Pass, and with it most of America's critical mineral industry, to wither and to die so that we could focus on manufacturing. Then we outsourced the manufacturing. And I know this is a story I'm telling, but it's a story many of the advanced economies represented here today understand well. We outsourced the manufacturing so we could focus on designing these goods. And then one day we woke up and we realized we had outsourced our economic security and our very future. We were at the mercy of whoever controlled supply chains for these minerals. So my hope is that we are gathered here today as the first but important step to rectifying this mistake. Together, our collective talent for innovation, our advantage over rivals where our advantage over rivals has only grown, and to apply it to bringing back manufacturing and reopening mines here in the United States, but also in all the partner nations represented.
Yeah. A little story there for you from Marco. He doesn't need to explain to anyone here that critical minerals are vital to the devices we use every single day. Every day.
Tell you how honored we truly are that all of you would make the trip to be a part of this on such an important topic. And I want to thank the Vice President for coming this morning. I thought it was important you hear from him because it's a priority for this administration at the highest order, as it is, I know, a priority for many of our partners. And our hope is to use both this forum and our position here today to serve as a convener on what really is an international problem, an international situation or an international issue that needs multilateral international solutions. I don't need to explain to anybody here that critical minerals are vital to the devices that we use every single day. They power our infrastructure, our industry, and our national defense, which is something that's not talked about enough, but it's a key part of that. And so our goal is to have a global market that's secure, a global supply that's enduring and is available to everyone, every nation, at an affordable price. That's a top priority for this administration.
Top priority. Finally. One American News covering it. One of the few.
Is that we are gathered here today as the first but important step to rectifying this mistake, to bring together our collective talent for innovation where our advantage over rivals is only grown, and to apply it to bringing back manufacturing and reopening mines here in the United States, but also in all the partner nations represented here today.
This is huge.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio emphasizes the importance of critical minerals. Speaking at the State Department today, Rubio says it's a multilateral international issue that needs national solutions. He said critical minerals are vital to devices everyday Americans use, like power infrastructure, America's industry, and national defense. Rubio noted miners in Mountain Pass, California, discovered one of the world's richest mineral deposits in 1949. By 1952, he says Americans were mining rare earths there, and that discovery sparked a revolution. He asserts new technologies have since blinded manufacturers of their importance and necessity.
As we embrace what was new and glamorous, we outsource.
So the Export-Import Bank president, they announced Project Vault, the executive order. That just happened this week, okay? So we had what happened in January, early January, the executive order. And then we have the new executive order that creates Project Vault. And then today you have the summit on the critical minerals so that China and Russia and other nations cannot manipulate and control us. This is big deal. The first ever strategic minerals reserve, critical minerals reserve in U.S. history.
Gave us a very clear directive. He wanted us to come together and create the first ever strategic critical minerals reserve in American history. But it was an enormous challenge, not simply because it hadn't been done before, but we knew that we had to design it in a way that was scalable, that can be designed for long-term success, and that would help domestic mining industry, refining, processing, all catalyze that activity. But most importantly, President Trump wanted it delivered in a way that wasn't subsidized by the American people. And so what we were forced to think very differently about this problem. And we actually scoured the world, examining and studying every single model that was out there for critical reserves and various public-private partnerships. And candidly, Morgan, we didn't find anything that really uniquely fit America. And so Project Vault, what really does is it creates a public-private partnership formula we think is uniquely suited and puts America's best foot forward. So it brings together our robust capital markets, which are the deepest and the best in the world. But it also brings in the original equipment manufacturers, those OEMs, as partners. And so since they're the ones benefiting the most from our strategic reserve, they're the ones making the long-term financial commitment to it. The Export-Import Bank of the United States is making a $10 billion loan. That financing also unlocks private sector capital, which earns a return that's commensurate with the risk. And so what it does is it creates a scenario, Maureen, where there are no free riders. Everybody pitches in to solve this huge problem.
I hope you're still paying attention. Here is the Secretary Burgum on the importance of Trump's newly announced Project Vault.
We need to have a buffer, if you will, for private industry to make sure our auto, our defense, our technology companies, that they can all keep moving ahead because, of course, critical minerals are in virtually everything. We all touch them every day, whether it's your cell phone, whether it's your automobile. They're a component of everything. China controlling 85 to 100% of the refining of these minerals. So we want to bring Mining back in this country, President Trump, mine baby mine. If we're going to be bringing back shipbuilding and manufacturing and onshoring, we've got to get back in the mining business. We also have to get into the refining business to refine those critical minerals here. And then when we get those businesses going, we've got to make sure that we have a stockpile so that when China, as they've done in the past, dumping into our markets, distorting the markets here, driving U.S. companies out of some of those countries, we've got to make sure that we've got a viable industry for critical minerals for ourselves and for our allies.
Well, Project Vault, baby. Bring it. Let's go. Secretary Burgum, we need to control our own resources in order to preserve our national security. Paul Zappulla writing that. Circular solar. Data centers could demand 50,000 tons of this beautiful example of high-grade American mined copper, which ensures thermal efficiency and transfers zero-emission power sources. Copper. Tin-coated copper strand cable well-suited for floating power grids or data center. Copper is in everything. Bare copper versus copper cable. Great thermal efficiency. 50 countries joining the Trump administration's Critical Minerals Summit. Securing minerals for tech, EV, defense, green energy. $12 billion investment, supply chain diversification, and allied cooperation. Secretary Rubio leading the charge in that news conference today. He said every country has a role to play in the global initiative for critical minerals. Every country. Some deals are already getting signed. Others are still talking. Trump administration expands critical mineral strategy with international summit on Wednesday, signing supply chain deals with European and Asian partners beyond Monday's $12 billion strategic reserve announcement. Big news. The summit is expanding beyond just announcements into partnerships, and that's creating some interesting power dynamics. Trump publicly praising Modi while Pakistan leaders desperately seek attention. The Critical Mineral Summit told the whole story. India's inside making rules, Pakistan's outside begging for scraps.
Till about 6 months ago, if I would have told you that Prime Minister Modi and President Trump had finally struck a tariff deal without even meeting each other in a summit or a bilateral, we would have been called delusional. After months of icy statements and avoiding each other at summits, it seems like US-India relations are finally on the mend. And our neighbor, Pakistan, should be worried. Very worried. A phone call between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Donald Trump delivered a mini trade deal that slashed India facing US tariffs from a brutal 25% plus 25% punitive duties to a far friendlier 18%. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar was in America at the same moment, walking straight into a high-level critical minerals summit that Pakistan seemingly did not get invited to. Meanwhile, Islamabad's leaders kept waving boxes of shiny rocks, lobbying and flattering and pleading, and Washington kept looking the other way. So is this just a tactical pause, or is Trump quietly preparing to kick Pakistan to the curb? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan, live from Dubai.
India's at the table making decisions, others left out, reshaping global alliances in real time. The vice president was there, spoke to world leaders on the importance of securing the critical minerals supply chain. Let's go to the vice president of the United States now.
Say a few things about what we're doing and why this matters. So I remember after our very wildly successful military operation in Venezuela, the President of the United States was talking with me and Marco and some of the other senior members of the cabinet. And he was talking just about how important it was that we ensured that the global economy had access to oil and gas many years in the future. And that, of course, is one of the reasons why we're interested in Venezuela is because it has such a critical importance in this all-important resource called oil. And as much as we talk about the modern economy, the digital economy, the high-tech economy, the president said something that was very, very important and I think should inform a lot of how we think about future growth, which is that as much as data centers and technology and all of these incredible things that we're all working on matter, fundamentally, you still have an economy that runs on real things. And there is no realer thing than oil. And I would add to that, there's no realer thing than critical minerals. And I think a lot of us have learned the hard way, in some ways, over the last year, how much our economies depend on these critical minerals. So every man and woman, I believe, in this room understands what we're confronting together today. And I say together, and that is very much something that is at the heart of Secretary Rubio's initiative, and as he said, at the heart of what we're trying to do all across the administration, is recognize that this is something where our alliances and our friendships can really help one another. We're all on the same team. We're all rowing in the same direction. I believe that in this room, we have close to 2/3 of the world's GDP represented, and so we have the capacity to make ourselves more independent, more self-reliant, and that's what we should be doing.
And that's exactly what we are doing. The vice president is talking cooperation, but here is an urgent economic reality driving the entire initiative. We know that today the international market for critical minerals is failing. That's what he says. Listen.
Today, the international market for critical minerals is failing. It's failing to create domestic markets or dignified jobs for our labor forces, and it's failing to keep our nation safe. Supply chains remain brittle and exceptionally concentrated. Asset and commodity prices are persistently depressed, driven downward by forces beyond any individual country's control. Now, how many times cumulatively have one of us or many of us in this room heard some variation of the story that I'm about to tell? A lithium mine, a gallium recovery center, you name it, is announced, sometimes with years in planning and financing nearly in place. Then overnight, foreign supply floods the market, the prices collapse, and investors pull out. The project stalls, and eventually the project dies on the vine. We've all seen it firsthand in all of our countries. And the result is a global market where consistent investment is nearly impossible, and it will stay that way so long as prices are erratic and unpredictable. And that's one of the things that we want to work on with this initiative. Let's make the prices more predictable and less erratic so that we can support the domestic supply chains and the investment that makes those supply chains possible.
You know, as I watch this, I think about an administration that is proactive, that is executing its authority, looking out for you and me. The last 4 years of the Biden administration, they did nothing. There was nothing. There was no support. There was no growth. No proactive behavior or policy. Just confusion on which bathroom your kids should choose. Now we finally have an administration that is doing something. Working for us. This is what I voted for. It's not just about friendship. The current system is broken and costing everyone money. Here's more from the vice president talking to leaders around the globe.
Every single one of us represented in this room has become dependent on arrangements we did not choose, and right now, arrangements that we cannot control. We all face the same vulnerability: access to the things that protect our people and sustain our way of life. Everything from missile defense systems to energy infrastructure, to advanced manufacturing, to emerging technologies. The fundamental supply chains that support these industries sometimes can vanish in the blink of an eye without any control or influence from many of the countries in this room. And we in the Trump administration believe it is the business of the government, of the people's government elected just over a year ago to confront such problems, and we want to confront them together.
Yes. Yes. Give me more. Into my veins, please. The Trump team sees this as government's job to fix, and they want the allies locked in before moving forward. The vice president invites allies to form a critical minerals trading bloc.
Members to form a trading bloc among allies and partners, one that guarantees American access to American industrial might while also expanding production across the entire zone. The benefits will be immediate and durable. Regardless of how much material flows into the global market, prices within the preferential trade zone will remain consistent. Over time, our goal within that zone is to create diverse centers of production, stable investment conditions, and supply chains that are immune to the kind of external disruptions that we've already talked about.
China.
For those of you who join, we offer you a necessary foundation for private financing and secure access to the critical mineral supplies your nation would require in an emergency or some other contingency. By regulating imports to preserve free and fair competition within the preferential trading zone, we will elevate our nation's miners and refiners, our investors and our producers alike. We are all on the same team, and we need to create the economic incentives that reward people for investing and building in our countries. Membership will be vital for developing economies seeking to expand mining capacity. And it'll be just as important for the advanced economies that rely on these materials to sustain their advanced industries, to sustain their growth and security.
Did you even know this was an issue? Did you even know this was a blind spot? They just figured it out. Trump's like, you know what? Something's wrong here. We need to fix it. I mean, again, I go back to COVID. I only had that reference point during COVID when supply chains were completely disrupted. That was my first taste of this. But when I started to understand the critical minerals element here, that's like 1,000 times worse than COVID supply chains being disrupted. You can't get toilet paper at Costco, okay? We're talking about the backbone of the industrial system in this country, the national security infrastructure in this nation, the data centers that you rely on when you're scrolling Facebook and you're scrolling X and you're on YouTube even. They all rely on these critical resources. And it all dies when China says, sorry, no minerals for you. Right? Amazing. From invitation to action, the vice president just put a concrete offer on the table that forces countries to choose sides. Welcome to the MAGA world order. The United States called for a global rare earth coalition to bolster security against China, considering these minerals essential to its defense. At the summit with more than 50 nations, Rubio warned that external dependence on mining is a strategic vulnerability. Rubio's making the China threat explicit. The coalition isn't just about trade, it is about national security. Back to the Import-Export Bank.
Mr. President, the President gave us a very clear directive. By clear directive, it was much more of an order for us to figure out how to, for the first time in American history, create a strategic critical minerals reserve in a way that would benefit the non-military manufacturing complex. And the challenge was enormous, not simply because it had never been done before, Mr. President, but we knew that you expected us to deliver in a big way, in a way that was scalable, in a way that was designed for long-term success, and in a way that would help revitalize our domestic mining industry. But most importantly, most crucially, that it not be subsidized by American taxpayers. And so that's exactly what we've done. Mr. President, what you've announced today is a truly uniquely American solution. It brings together our capital markets, which are the best and biggest in the world, with our manufacturers, our innovators, our miners, all pitching in to make this possible. Now, these things don't happen without the best and the brightest within industry being at the table. And Mr. President, everyone wants to engage with this administration, with your administration. The key ingredient here was your call to action.
Yep.
Your call to action allowed us to bring together the best players in the market, sometimes the fiercest competitors, getting them to work together to come up with a creative solution. Now, in addition to our great team at the Export-Import Bank, who worked around the clock, led by Brian Greeley, Jeff Wilson, Sarah Whitten, and many others, we benefited from having the biggest manufacturing CEOs, the smartest market players at the table, all looking to solve this problem. So what we have with Project Vault is marrying the capital solution with what we need when we need it most. And the best part about it is that the American taxpayer will earn a return on financing the first ever strategic critical minerals reserve in history. And we thank you, Mr. President, for allowing this to happen. All of the people around us today help make it possible. Our cabinet secretaries, our top CEOs, their teams, top market players, whether it be GM, GE Vernova, Boeing, Clarios, Google, Mercuria, especially Brian Fallick, Hartree, Traxxas, our friend Robert Friedland. All of us work together, Mr. President, to deliver this for you, and for the American people, so that manufacturers and workers all across the country can rest assured they'll have what they need when they need it most.
Let's go. Let's go. So you just saw it. The Export-Import Bank president revealed something incredible. For the first time in American history, we're creating a strategic minerals reserve that will actually make money for taxpayers, not cost money, make money. Trump didn't just launch a coalition. He weaponized capitalism itself against China's monopoly. Look, Trump just fired the opening shot in the resource war of the 21st century. Well, Democrats spent years talking about supply chains. Trump built an actual coalition of 50 nations to break China's mineral monopoly. The Export-Import Bank is financing America's first ever strategic critical minerals reserve, and it's designed to turn a profit for you. India's in, Pakistan's out, and China's mineral empire just got its first real challenge. This is not just policy. This is economic warfare with American allies lined up and ready to fight. The question is simple. Do you think America can build a supply chain strong enough to challenge China's decades-long monopoly? Let me know below. And while you're thinking about America's resource independence, check out the Next News merch shop for gear that celebrates American self-reliance.
The system controls information. Information control is power. I want you to see this. The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now.